I was sitting on the 42nd floor of my downtown office on a Thursday when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Outside, the city sprawled beneath me like something I'd conquered. The Forbes magazine on my desk showed my face under the headline, "The Ghost King of Distress." Inside, they called me a titan, a genius who turned dying companies into gold. They said I was worth $847 million, but none of that mattered when I saw who was calling. Jude Jameson, my father. Or at least that's what I was supposed to call the man who'd spent 18 years reminding me I didn't belong in his house. He never called. Not on birthdays, not on holidays, not when I launched my fund or closed my first $100 million deal. Radio silence for years. Until that day. The day my face hit newsstands across America. That wasn't a coincidence. My finger hovered over the screen. Every instinct said decline. But curiosity won. I answered. "Hello? Ivan, it's your father." His voice sounded exactly like I remembered. Controlled, transactional, like he was opening a business meeting. "I saw the magazine. Impressive." I waited. He hadn't called to congratulate me. "We need to talk. The family needs you to come home this weekend." There it was. The real reason. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun reflect off the glass towers around me. "What's this about?" "It's Nicholas." A pause, perfectly timed for effect. "Your grandfather. He's not doing well, Ivan. Getting older, health declining. He specifically asked for you." My pulse jumped at Nicholas's name. He was the only person in that family who'd ever treated me like I mattered. The only one who showed up when everyone else forgot I existed. "What's wrong with him?" "We'll explain everything this weekend. There's a family gathering at the estate. He wants to see you." "We all do." Jude's tone shifted, added something that sounded almost like warmth. "We miss you, son. It's been too long." Son. He'd never called me that with any real feeling behind it. Not once. "This is sudden," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I know, but family is important, especially now. There are some business matters we need to discuss too. Decisions about the company's future. Your grandfather wants your input." Business matters. There was the truth hiding under the sentiment. "I'll think about it." "Ivan, please. Whatever happened in the past, you're still family. This is important." The line went quiet. I could hear him breathing, waiting for me to commit. For years, I'd waited for calls like this. Invitations to matter, to be included, to be seen. Now that it was finally happening, all I felt was suspicion. "I'll let you know," I said, and hung up before he could push harder. The phone went dark. I sat there staring at it, my mind running calculations. If Nicholas was really sick and asking for me, I couldn't ignore it. He'd been there when no one else was. He'd shown up to my school events when my own parents couldn't be bothered. He'd slipped me money for college when Jude said I should earn my own way. He was the only reason I survived that house with any sense of self-worth intact. But this family only reached out when they needed something, and the timing, right after Forbes, was too perfect to ignore. I made a decision. I called my attorney first. "Michael, I need a full workup on Jameson Industrial Group. Financial statements, debt positions, creditor lists, pending lawsuits, everything. I want it by tomorrow morning." "That's your father's company, right?" He sounded surprised. "Correct. And I need to know exactly what shape it's in before I walk into that house." Next, I booked a flight to Houston for Friday evening. Then I sat back and looked out at the city one more time. The boy who grew up invisible in that house was about to walk back through the front door. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I'd built an empire they said I'd never have. I'd earned respect from people who actually mattered, and I owed the Jamesons nothing. This weekend wasn't a family reunion. It was the opening move in a game they didn't know I was already playing. You think you know where this is going. You don't. What Ivan discovers in that house, what his family is really hiding, and the revenge he plans. It goes deeper than you can imagine. Subscribe now so you get more stories like this. Friday evening, I pulled up to the Jameson estate in a rented sedan. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed billionaire. No need to show my hand yet. The house looked exactly the same as I remembered. Immaculate lawns, imposing columns, the kind of wealth designed to make visitors feel small. For 18 years, I'd walked through that front door feeling like I was trespassing in someone else's life. Not anymore. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat and headed up the stone walkway. Memories flashed uninvited, sitting alone at the dining table while everyone else laughed, hiding in my room to avoid Aiden's insults, watching from my window as they left for family outings without bothering to tell me they were going. This house had never been a home. It was a museum where I was the unwanted exhibit. The door opened before I could knock. Lydia stood there, her smile practiced and hollow. "Ivan, darling, you came." She moved in for an air kiss, her perfume overwhelming. "You look thin. Are you eating properly?" Some things never changed. Not, "It's good to see you," or "We're glad you're here." Just immediate criticism wrapped in fake concern. "I'm fine, Lydia." I stepped inside. The foyer was exactly as I remembered. Marble floors, that ridiculous chandelier Jude always bragged about, family photos lining the walls. I was in exactly 3 of them, always positioned at the edge of the frame like an afterthought. Well, well. The Forbes cover boy graces us with his presence. Aiden emerged from the living room, older but still wearing that entitled smirk. He'd put on weight, and his hairline had started its retreat. "Didn't think you'd actually show up." "Aiden." I kept my tone neutral. "Hey." Chloe descended the stairs, eyes glued to her phone, barely glancing up. She was wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Did you bring your checkbook?" She laughed like it was a joke, but I caught the edge beneath it. "Good to see you too, Chloe." Footsteps echoed from the hallway, and Jude appeared. He'd aged since I last saw him. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his mouth. He extended his hand for a firm shake, his eyes assessing me like I was a quarterly earnings report. "Good to see you, son. You've done well for yourself." There was that word again. Son. Still didn't sound right coming from him. "Thanks for coming on short notice," he continued, ushering me toward the formal dining room. "We have a lot to discuss." I noticed the seating arrangement immediately. Jude at the head of the table, Lydia beside him, Aiden and Chloe flanking them on either side. My seat was at the far end, isolated. The same spot I'd occupied for 18 years, close enough to be present, far enough to be excluded from real conversation. "Where's Nicholas?" I asked, staying near the doorway. "You said he wanted to see me." There was a pause, just a beat too long. Jude exchanged a quick glance with Lydia. "He's resting upstairs. The doctors say he needs to conserve energy. You'll see him tomorrow." Something about that answer didn't sit right. If Nicholas had specifically asked for me, why wouldn't he at least come down to say hello? "Let's have dinner first," Lydia said quickly, already moving to change the subject. "We have so much to catch up on. It's been too long since we were all together." Aiden poured expensive wine, making a show of offering me what he called the good bottle. We settled into our seats, and the interrogation began, disguised as family small talk. "So, Ivan," Jude started, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. "Your fund manages how much now?" "We're doing well," I said vaguely. "Come on, don't be modest." Aiden leaned forward. "Forbes said you're worth almost $1 billion. Is that true?" Chloe jumped in before I could answer. "So, could you buy a company if you wanted to? Just buy it?" I took a sip of wine. Watching them carefully, every question felt calculated. "Depends on the company," I said. "But you have that kind of cash on hand?" Aiden pressed. "Liquid assets?" "Some," I replied. Jude set down his fork. "The reason we ask, Ivan, is because we wanted to discuss something important. Something that affects the whole family." He paused for effect. "Tomorrow morning, we're having a family meeting. Nicholas will be there. We need to talk about the future of Jameson Industrial Group and your potential role in it." There it was. The real reason for the phone call. The sudden warmth. The family gathering. They didn't want me. They wanted my money. I kept my expression neutral, but internally, pieces were clicking into place. "What kind of role?" "We'll get into details tomorrow," Jude said smoothly. "When everyone's fresh and Nicholas can participate. For now, let's just enjoy being together." But I wasn't enjoying anything. I was calculating. By tomorrow morning, I'd have Michael's full financial report on Jameson Industrial Group. I'd know exactly what kind of trouble they were in and exactly how desperate they really were. I smiled and raised my glass. To family. They echoed the toast, relief visible on their faces. They thought I was playing along. They thought I was the same invisible kid who'd spent years desperate for their approval. They had no idea what was coming. I woke up at dawn in my old childhood bedroom. The room was smaller than I remembered, still bare and impersonal. They'd never bothered decorating it, even when I lived there. No posters, no personality, just beige walls and basic furniture. A guest room for an unwanted guest. I opened my encrypted laptop. Michael's email had arrived overnight with a single PDF attachment. The subject line read, "Jameson Industrial Group, Confidential Analysis." What I read in the next 15 minutes confirmed everything I'd suspected. The company was dying. Not struggling, dying. Jameson Industrial Group was $340 million in debt, drowning in obligations it couldn't meet. Jude had made a disastrous bet on renewable energy 3 years ago, trying to pivot away from traditional oil services. But he entered the market late, overpaid for acquisitions, and hired executives who had no idea what they were doing. The expansion had burned through cash reserves like gasoline on a fire. 2 major lawsuits were pending from botched contracts where Jameson Industrial had failed to deliver. One client was suing for $47 million. The stock price had collapsed 78% in 18 months. Banks had issued default notices on 3 separate credit lines. Creditors were circling, and according to Michael's analysis, the company had maybe 90 days before forced bankruptcy. Jude's entire fortune was tied up in company stock, now essentially worthless. The estate I was sleeping in was mortgaged to the company as collateral. If Jameson Industrial went under, the family would lose everything. I cross-referenced the timeline. Jude had called me 3 days after the Forbes article hit, not because he was proud, because he saw a solution to his problem sitting on a magazine cover. The family gathering wasn't about Nicholas's health or reconciliation. It was a trap designed to guilt me into writing a check that would save them from their own incompetence. But here's what they didn't know. When you specialize in distressed assets like I did, you learn to move fast. And I'd learned from the best. I called my attorney. Michael, I want to buy Jameson Industrial Group's debt. All of it. Through shell companies. I don't want the Jamesons to know it's me. He was quiet for a moment. That's aggressive. You'd be the primary creditor, which means I'd control everything. Restructuring, takeover, liquidation, all of it. Roughly $85 million to acquire the debt at current discount rates. You'd own them. The debt was trading at 25 cents on the dollar due to the imminent bankruptcy. I stared out the window at the perfectly manicured lawn where I used to play alone as a child. Do it. I want control before they even finish their pitch. Understood. I'll have the acquisitions completed by end of today. I closed the laptop and headed downstairs. The family was already gathered in the formal dining room. Everyone dressed like we were attending a board meeting instead of having breakfast. An aide was positioning Nicholas's wheelchair at one end of the table. He looked frailer than I'd expected. Thinner, paler, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and pain. When our eyes met, I saw genuine warmth there, something I'd never seen from anyone else in this room. Ivan. Nicholas reached out, and I gripped his hand. It felt thin, fragile. I'm glad you came, boy. Of course, Nicholas. The aide adjusted Nicholas's wheelchair closer to the table before quietly leaving the room. Jude cleared his throat, commanding attention. Now that we're all here, let's get to the matter at hand. He launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about family legacy and blood responsibility. He explained the company was facing challenges, a massive understatement, and needed a temporary capital infusion to weather the storm. Aiden jumped in right on cue. We're all investing everything we have. Family sticks together, right? Chloe added her rehearsed line. You wouldn't let grandfather's life's work disappear, would you? Then Jude delivered the ask. I should invest $200 million to save the family business. In return, I'd get a minority stake and a seat on the board. Translation is, they'd keep control, I'd take all the risk, and they'd bleed my money until there was nothing left. I listened without expression, letting them finish their performance. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone stared at me, waiting. Let me think about it, I finally said. This is a significant decision. Jude's frowned. He expected immediate agreement, or at least desperation to please. Of course. Take your time. He said. I stood. I'd like to spend some time alone with Nicholas, if that's all right. Before anyone could answer, I wheeled Nicholas toward the back door, leaving the rest of them sitting at the table, uncertain and off balance. Exactly where I wanted them. Real talk. 80% of you are watching this without subscribing. That's like showing up to someone's victory party, eating the food, hearing the whole story, and then leaving without even saying congratulations. If this story gave you even 5 minutes of satisfaction, the least you can do is hit that subscribe button. It's free. It takes 2 seconds, and it actually helps us keep bringing you these stories. I wheeled Nicholas out to the garden, away from the house and the watching eyes inside. We sat under an old oak tree where we used to talk when I was young. The morning air was cool, and birds moved through the branches above us. Nicholas looked tired, but his eyes were still sharp. You've become something remarkable, Ivan, he said quietly. I always knew you would. You're the only reason I survived this family, Nicholas. He looked away, and something heavy crossed his face. Guilt, maybe shame. That's what I need to talk to you about." His voice dropped lower. "They want your money. You know that, don't you?" I nodded. "I figured it out. The company is finished. Jude made terrible decisions, chased trends he didn't understand, borrowed money he couldn't repay." Nicholas shook his head. "He's desperate, and desperate men do ugly things." I waited, sensing there was more. "There's something I need to tell you," Nicholas continued, his hands gripping the wheelchair arms. "Something I should have told you years ago." He took a breath. "The reason Jude treated you the way he did, the reason you never fit in this family, it's because he knew the truth about who you really are." My stomach dropped. "What truth?" "You're not Jude's biological son." The world tilted. I heard the words, but my brain struggled to process them. "What?" "Your biological parents were Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford. Good people, friends of mine, actually." Nicholas's voice cracked. "They died when you were 2 years old. Car accident." I sat there, frozen, while everything I thought I knew about myself restructured in my head. "I don't understand." Nicholas explained slowly. Thomas Rutherford had been his business partner decades ago. They'd built the early Jameson empire together, two young men with ambition and complementary skills. When Thomas and Rebecca died, they left behind a baby, me. Nicholas had made a decision. He convinced Jude and Lydia to adopt me. "I thought I was giving you a home, a family," Nicholas said, tears forming in his eyes. "I thought love would follow. But Jude resented the obligation. He saw you as charity, a favor to his father that he never wanted to do." Everything made sense now. The coldness, the exclusion, the casual cruelty. I wasn't their son. I was a burden they'd been forced to accept. An obligation they counted down the days until I turned 18 and they could stop pretending. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out harder than I intended. "I was a coward," Nicholas admitted. "I thought if you knew, it would hurt more. I thought maybe they'd come around eventually." He wiped his eyes. "But they never did, and I watched you suffer for it. I tried to make up for it, Ivan. I tried to be there, but I should have done more." I sat in stunned silence. The man I'd spent my whole life calling my father wasn't. The family that rejected me had no claim to begin with. And Nicholas, the one person who'd shown me kindness, had known all along. "Does the rest of the family know?" I asked. "Jude and Lydia know. I don't think they ever told Aiden or Chloe. They probably just let them believe you were the disappointing older brother. Why are you telling me now?" Nicholas looked at me directly. "Because they're going to use me to manipulate you. They're going to say this is about saving my legacy, about honoring the family name." He gripped my hand. "But this company doesn't deserve to be saved. And you don't owe these people anything, Ivan. You're a Rutherford, not a Jameson. Don't let them trap you with guilt over a name that was never yours." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old key. "Your parents left you something. Documents, letters, photos. I kept them safe all these years." He pressed the key into my palm. "Safety deposit box at First Houston Bank. Box 447. It's all there. When this weekend is over, go see it. Learn who you really are." I stared at the key. This small piece of metal that represented parents I'd never known, a life I'd never lived, an identity stolen from me before I was old enough to remember. "They want to play family?" I said quietly, more to myself than Nicholas. "Fine. Let's see how this family game ends." Nicholas nodded slowly, understanding exactly what I meant. That evening, My phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Michael. The subject line was simple: acquisition complete. I read the details twice. Every dollar of Jameson Industrial Group's debt, all $340 million worth, had been purchased through a network of shell corporations. The transactions were clean, untraceable back to me. As of 6:47 p.m. Saturday evening, I was the primary creditor of my father's company. I controlled whether it lived or died, and nobody in this house had any idea. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and headed downstairs. The family had reconvened in Jude's home office, waiting for what they thought would be my answer. They sat there looking expectant. Jude behind his massive desk, Lydia sat on the leather sofa, Aiden sprawling in an armchair, Chloe examining her nails. "Have you thought about our proposal?" Jude asked as I entered. I took my time settling into the chair across from him. "I have some questions first, about the company's actual financial position." Jude shifted slightly. "Of course. What would you like to know?" "The debt. How much exactly are we talking about?" "It's manageable," Jude said smoothly. "Around $100 million, spread across various credit lines. Nothing we can't handle with proper capitalization." He was lying. The real number was more than 3 times that. "And the lawsuits?" I pressed. "Minor contract disputes. Our legal team expects favorable settlements." Another lie. The lawsuits were for nearly $50 million combined, and Jameson Industrial had no viable defense. Aiden jumped in with corporate buzzwords he clearly didn't understand. "It's just short-term liquidity issues. Once we optimize our operational efficiency and leverage our core competencies." I almost laughed. He had no idea what any of those words actually meant. Lydia tried a different approach. "This is your family's legacy, Ivan. Your grandfather built this company from nothing. Can you really let it disappear?" I looked at each of them, documenting their dishonesty for what would come next. Then I said the words they wanted to hear. "All right, I'll consider investing." The relief that washed over the room was almost physical. Jude's shoulders dropped. Lydia smiled. Aiden actually looked like he might cry from joy. "But I need complete financial transparency first," I continued. "Full audit, all documents, everything." Jude hesitated. He knew what a real audit would reveal. "That's reasonable. We can arrange that next week." "Good. My team will be in touch Monday morning." After the meeting broke up, Aiden cornered me in the hallway. The friendly mask dropped instantly. "Just so we're clear," he said, voice low. "You put money in, but Dad and I still run the company. You're just the bank, got it? You were never really family anyway, so don't get any ideas about playing CEO." I looked at him steadily. Noted. He walked away satisfied, having no clue what was about to happen. Later, Chloe found me on the back patio. "Hey, so, since you're helping with the company, can you also invest in my lifestyle brand? I only need about $5 million to really get it off the ground. No awareness, no gratitude, just entitlement." "Let me focus on one thing at a time," I said. She pouted. "Whatever. Just remember who your family is when you're throwing money around." That night, Lydia knocked on my bedroom door with tea, a gesture she'd never made when I actually lived there. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly vulnerable. "I know we weren't always the best parents, but family is complicated, you know?" She was rewriting history in real time. "We were young, overwhelmed, but we always cared, Ivan. Deep down." I said nothing. Helping the company would mean so much to your father. To all of us. "I'll do what's right," I replied. I didn't specify right for whom. Sunday morning, Jude requested a private breakfast, just the two of us in the formal dining room. He tried the patriarch routine one last time. I haven't always been good at showing emotions, Ivan, but I am proud of what you've built. The words were hollow, decades too late and transparently manipulative. This company is more than business, he continued. It's our name, your name. Is it? I asked quietly. My name? He looked uncomfortable but pushed forward. Blood is blood. You're a Jameson. I set down my coffee cup. Tell me something, Jude. When I was 12 and won the state math competition, do you remember what you said to me? His face went blank. You said, "Don't let it go to your head. Smart kids are everywhere." I kept my voice level. When I got into an elite university, you told me not to forget where I came from. When I started my own firm, you said I was abandoning my family. And now, when you need money, suddenly I'm family again. His face hardened. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I stood. I don't want you to say anything at all. I packed my bag and said goodbye to Nicholas privately. We embraced, an unspoken understanding passing between us. The rest of the family got perfunctory farewells. We'll hear from you soon? Jude asked. About the investment? You'll definitely hear from me, I said. I meant it, just not the way he thought. Monday morning at 9 a.m., Jude's phone rang. A law firm he didn't recognize. They were calling to formally notify him of debt acceleration and change of control provisions. His company's creditors had consolidated. Who is this creditor? He demanded. There was a long pause on the other end. The beneficial owner is Ivan Jameson. Jude's frantic calls started within the hour. I let the first 3 go to voicemail. On the 4th, I answered. What the hell did you do? His voice was raw, all pretense of control gone. I bought your debt, I said calmly. All of it. That's impossible. How did you? When you're good at distressed assets, you learn to move fast. I kept my tone professional, like we were discussing someone else's problem. Shell corporations, coordinated purchases. It took about 48 hours. You can't do this to your own family. My family? I let the words hang there. Let's talk about that, Jude. I know I'm not your biological son. Nicholas told me everything. He went silent. Then, that old man had no right. He had every right. He's the only honest person in your entire family. My voice stayed calm. So when you talk about family and blood, we both know you're lying. You never wanted me. You resented every single day I lived under your roof. That's not... This is... He was scrambling, trying to find footing. Fine. You're angry. I get it. But don't punish everyone else. Your mother, your brother, your sister, they depend on this company. They're not my mother, brother, or sister, I said. They're strangers who spent 18 years treating me like I was taking up space, and now they're facing the consequences of Jude Jameson's terrible business decisions. Not mine. Yours. His desperation turned to fury. You ungrateful, we raised you, we fed you, gave you a home. You gave me a room and the legal minimum required to avoid neglect charges. That's not family, Jude. That's an obligation. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end. What do you want? Here's what's going to happen, I said. Tomorrow, I'm taking operational control of Jameson Industrial Group. You and Aiden are removed from executive positions immediately. I'm bringing in my own team to restructure the company. Whatever equity you have left will be diluted to essentially nothing. You can't. I already did. As primary creditor, I have full authority. Check with your lawyers if you don't believe me. He hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was a video call. The entire family was gathered in Jude's office, staring at the camera like I was holding them hostage. In a way, I was. Lydia was crying, probably real tears this time. Aiden looked like he wanted to reach through the screen and strangle me. Chloe kept saying, "This is insane," over and over. "You're destroying us," Aiden shouted. "We took you in when you had nothing." "You took me in because Nicholas forced you to," I replied. "I was an obligation you couldn't wait to be rid of." Lydia tried her maternal card. "We loved you as our own. You forgot my birthday 6 years in a row. You missed my high school graduation entirely. When I won awards, you hid them in drawers." My voice stayed cold. "That's not love, Lydia. That's systematic neglect." Chloe jumped in, desperate. "So you're just going to ruin our lives? Over hurt feelings?" "No. Over decades of cruelty that you all pretended didn't happen." I explained the restructuring in detail. Assets would be sold to pay creditors. The Jameson name would be stripped from all company branding. Whatever remained after debts were settled, I would control completely. And the house they were sitting in, mortgaged to the company as collateral, would be liquidated along with everything else. Lydia gasped. "Where are we supposed to go?" "I don't know, Lydia, but I'm sure you'll figure something out." I leaned closer to the camera. "You're family after all, and family sticks together, right?" I ended the call and sat back in my chair. I'd expected to feel triumphant. Instead, there was just cold satisfaction. They'd finally learned what it felt like to be powerless in a world that didn't care about you. My phone buzzed again. Nicholas. His message was short. "There's something else I need to tell you. Something about your parents' death. It wasn't an accident. Can we talk?" Everything stopped. Quick thing. If you're enjoying this story and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. It's literally free and takes 3 seconds. Don't be that person. I drove through the night back to Houston. Nicholas's message kept replaying in my head. It wasn't an accident. Every mile felt heavier than the last. I arrived at his modest house just after 2 in the morning. He was waiting, lights on, door unlocked. We sat in his study, old documents and photographs spread across the desk. He poured us both whiskey with shaking hands. "Your parents, Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford, weren't just my business partners," Nicholas began, his voice rough. "They were better than me in every way. Thomas had the vision, the ethics, the leadership. I was the operator, the deal maker who cut corners he refused to cut." I listened, the whiskey untouched in my hand. In the late 80s, we had a chance at a massive contract, the kind that would set us up for life. But it required shortcuts, environmental regulations ignored, safety protocols skipped. Nicholas stared at his hands. Thomas refused, said we'd build the company the right way or not at all. We fought about it for weeks. He threatened to walk away, take his half of the company, expose what I'd already done behind his back. My blood went cold. I knew where this was going. I was young, stupid, and terrified of losing everything. His voice cracked. I knew a man who could solve problems. He'd done work for some competitors. I told myself I just wanted Thomas scared enough to back off. Just enough pressure to make him see reason. What did you do? My voice came out flat. Their car went off a bridge 3 weeks later. Brake line cut. Tears streamed down his face. I didn't pull the trigger, but I signed the order. Same thing. I killed your parents for money and control of a company. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping back. Rage, grief, and betrayal crashed together in my chest. You murdered them? Yes. He didn't try to justify it or soften it. I was a coward who valued money over human life. And when I saw you in that hospital, 2 years old and alone, I couldn't live with what I'd done. So I forced Jude to adopt you. I tried to watch over you, tried to make up for murdering your parents. He looked up at me. But how do you make up for that? How do you repay a debt soaked in blood? Nicholas slid a metal box across the desk. This is everything. Contracts, communications, payment records to the man I hired. I kept it as insurance at first, then later as, I don't know, confession, penance. He pushed it toward me. It's yours now. Do with it what you will. Turn me in, expose me, destroy me. I deserve all of it. I stared at the box. This man had murdered my parents. This man had also been the only source of love in my childhood. He was a killer and a grandfather figure. The moral complexity was suffocating. I'm dying, Ivan. Nicholas's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months, maybe 4. I waited too long to tell you. I was a coward to the end. He met my eyes. But before I go, I want you to know something. You became everything I hoped you would be. Everything your real parents would have been proud of. You're good in ways I never was. Don't let my sins poison who you are. I picked up the metal box. Inside were photos of Thomas and Rebecca, young, smiling, full of life that Nicholas had stolen. Documents detailing his conspiracy, and a letter from my mother, written when I was born, talking about their dreams for my future. Something broke inside me. Tears I'd held back for decades finally came. Did Jude know? I asked through the tears. Nicholas hesitated, then nodded. He helped cover it up, in exchange for control of the company when I stepped back. So Jude wasn't just a bad father. He was an accessory to my parents' murder. I walked out without another word, carrying the box that held the truth about where I came from and how much blood had been spilled to hide it. 2 weeks later, Nicholas died in his sleep. 1 week after that, I received notification that his will was being read. All family members were required to attend. I held the evidence box in my hands, still unsure what justice looked like when the guilty party was already dead and had been the only person who ever loved you. 2 weeks later, Nicholas died in his sleep. 3 days after the funeral, I stood in First Houston Bank holding the key Nicholas had given me, box 447. I'd avoided opening it while he was alive, unsure if I could handle whatever was inside. But now there was no more avoiding it. The bank employee left me alone in the private viewing room. Inside the box were photos of Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford, young, smiling, full of the life Nicholas had stolen from them. Business documents proved they'd been the real architects of the company. My mother's pregnancy journal described dreams for my future built on integrity and kindness. Then I found it. A memo dated 2 weeks before my parents' death. Jude's signature at the bottom, acknowledging receipt of $250,000 to maintain discretion regarding the Rutherford matter. He hadn't just helped cover up the murder. He'd known it was coming and taken payment to stay silent. I sat there staring at that document, rage building in my chest. Nicholas was dead. But Jude was very much alive. 1 week later, I received notification that Nicholas's will was being read. All family members were required to attend. I made copies of every document in that box, especially the memo with Jude's signature. The revenge wasn't finished yet. The law office conference room was all expensive wood and leather, the kind of place where fortunes changed hands behind closed doors. Jude, Lydia, Aiden, and Chloe sat on one side of the long table. I sat alone on the other. We hadn't spoken since the takeover. The hostile glares from everyone except the empty chair where Nicholas should have been told me everything I needed to know about how they felt. The attorney cleared his throat and began reading. To my family, I leave my final truth and my final distribution of worldly possessions. Standard bequests came first, small amounts to charity, personal items to old friends. Then he reached the section that made everyone sit up straighter. I, Nicholas Jameson, do hereby confess to the murder of Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford in 1988. The room went dead silent. Jude's face drained of color. Lydia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The attorney continued reading Nicholas's written confession, every detail of the conspiracy, the hired killer, the break line, the cover-up. Aiden looked like he might be sick. What the hell is this? But the attorney kept reading. Nicholas laid it all out. How he'd valued money over human life. How he'd spent decades trying to atone. How he'd forced Jude to adopt me as penance for sins I knew nothing about. Then came the financial section. Nicholas's entire personal estate, $127 million in assets separate from the company, was left entirely to me. Real estate holdings, investment accounts, cash, all of it. Jude, Lydia, Aiden, and Chloe received nothing. Aiden exploded. This is insane! He can't just leave us nothing! He absolutely can, and did, the attorney replied calmly. But Nicholas wasn't finished. All of his personal debts, $43 million worth, were assigned jointly to Jude, Lydia, and Aiden. Debts from failed investments, outstanding loans, obligations Nicholas had accumulated over decades. Nicholas's letter explained why. You took Ivan's childhood and gave him nothing but pain. Now you'll understand what it means to shoulder debt you didn't create. Chloe's voice went shrill. How are we supposed to pay $43 million? The attorney adjusted his glasses. That's not a legal matter I can advise on. Jude stood, fury replacing shock. This is his revenge from beyond the grave. Lydia was crying now, though whether from grief or fear I couldn't tell. We're his real family. How could he do this to us? Aiden turned on me, jabbing a finger across the table. You poisoned him against us. You manipulated a dying old man. I stayed calm. I didn't know about this will, but honestly, I'm not surprised. Nicholas understood consequences better than any of you ever will. Chloe's desperation took over. She actually got on her knees. Ivan, please, you can share some of it with us. We're going to lose everything. The house is already being sold. We have no income. And now this debt? We'll be bankrupt. We'll have nothing. I looked at her kneeling there, finally understanding what it felt like to have no power, no options, no one who cared. Now you know how I felt every single day growing up in that house. The difference is, you have each other. I had no one. Lydia tried one last manipulation. Ivan, I'm sorry. We were wrong. We made terrible mistakes, but you're not cruel like us. You're better. You can be the bigger person and help us. Please. I stood, gathering my things. You're right about one thing. I am better than you. I looked at each of them, which is exactly why I'm not going to enable your dysfunction anymore. I headed for the door, but stopped and turned back. Nicholas left me everything because he knew I'd earned it by surviving you. You wanted me to save the family legacy? I did. I saved myself from it. I straightened my shoulders. From this moment forward, I'm not Ivan Jameson. I'm Ivan Rutherford. The Jameson name can die with the company. I walked out, leaving them sitting in the ruins of everything they thought they were entitled to. 1 month later, the Jamesons had lost it all. The estate was gone, sold to pay creditors. The company was restructured and stripped of their name. Bankruptcy proceedings were underway. Local news coverage painted the full picture. Jameson empire collapses amid scandal and debt. But I discovered something in Nicholas's evidence box that changed everything one more time. Buried in the documents was proof that Jude hadn't just helped cover up the murder. He'd known about it beforehand and had taken payment to stay silent. The revenge wasn't finished yet. I reviewed Nicholas's evidence files again, this time with prosecutors. The memo with Jude's signature was undeniable proof. A memo dated 2 weeks before my parents' death, signed by Jude, acknowledging payment of $250,000 to maintain discretion regarding the Rutherford matter. He'd known Nicholas was planning something. He'd taken money to stay quiet. And when my parents died, he'd helped bury the evidence. I faced the hardest decision of my life. Exposing this meant criminal investigations, media storms, and dragging my parents' deaths back into public view. But it also meant justice for Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford. And it meant the world would finally know I was never the problem. The Jamesons were. I called a prosecutor I trusted and laid out everything. This documents a murder for hire from 1988 and a cover-up that continued for decades. Nicholas Jameson is dead, but Jude Jameson is alive and complicit. This could reopen a cold case, she warned. Are you sure? My parents deserve justice, even if it's 30 years late. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. District Attorney reopening investigation into 1980s Rutherford deaths. Within hours, every major outlet picked it up. Billionaire investor uncovers evidence in parents' murder. Jameson family patriarch implicated in decades-old conspiracy. The media frenzy was immediate and relentless. 2 days later, police arrived at Jude's rental apartment. He was arrested on charges of conspiracy and accessory after the fact. The perp walk was broadcast on every local station. The man who'd valued respectability above everything, paraded in handcuffs for the world to see. Lydia held a desperate press conference, claiming total ignorance. I had no idea what my husband had done. It probably was true, but nobody cared. Aiden hired lawyers but couldn't afford competent ones. Chloe posted frantic social media statements that only made things worse. Nothing helped. The evidence was too solid. I agreed to one interview with a major network. I told my story, the neglect, the discovery of my true parentage, the murder revelation. I didn't do this for revenge, I said, looking directly into the camera. I did it because Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford deserved to have their son know the truth and fight for justice. Public opinion shifted massively in my favor. Comments flooded in. This man survived everything and still sought justice. True strength. The Jamesons got exactly what they deserved. Jude's trial was swift because the evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers tried arguing he'd been young and intimidated by Nicholas. The jury didn't buy it. He was convicted of conspiracy after the fact and obstruction of justice. 8 years in federal prison. But the legal consequences were only part of their destruction. The social death was complete. Country clubs revoked memberships. Former friends stopped returning calls. Business associates distanced themselves publicly. The Jameson name became toxic. Lydia, Aiden, and Chloe were forced to leave Houston entirely, relocating to a different state where nobody knew them. Aiden got a job managing inventory at a warehouse, the first real work he'd done in his life. Chloe's lifestyle brand collapsed overnight. Lydia lived in a small apartment, the fall from the estate so complete it seemed impossible. 6 months after the trial, I ran into Lydia at a grocery store. She looked older, worn, pushing a cart with generic brands and clipped coupons. Our eyes met across the aisle. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, an apology maybe, or a plea for help. I nodded once, acknowledging her existence, then walked past without stopping. No words were needed. That chapter was closed. Forbes ran a follow-up piece. Ivan Rutherford, the man who rebuilt his name. They detailed my journey from abandoned child to billionaire investor who brought killers to justice. The narrative was complete. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking truth. And I'd won. Standing in my office weeks later, I pulled out the key Nicholas had given me. Box 447 at First Houston Bank. Time to finally meet Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford through the things they'd left behind. 1 year after Jude's conviction, I returned to Box 447 at First Houston Bank. I'd kept my parents' photos and letters stored there, visiting occasionally when I needed to remember why the fight had been worth it. Thomas and Rebecca Rutherford, young, successful, the kind of people who built things instead of destroying them. My mother's journal still described dreams for my future built on integrity and kindness. They'd gotten the justice they deserved, and I'd made sure of it. Before you go, answer this. If you were Ivan and discovered everything he discovered, which would you choose? Option A. Take revenge, destroy the company, expose the murder, and watch them lose everything. Option B. Walk away. You've already won by becoming successful. Let them suffer in irrelevance. Option C. Something in between. Use your power, but show some mercy. Comment A, B, or C, and tell me why. No wrong answers here. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe now.